In the shadowed corridors of Winshire Palace, where centuries of tradition echo through marble halls, a storm was brewing that would shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Queen Isabel had ruled with grace for over 3 decades, but her recent marriage to Lord Edmund Blackwood, a commoner with a mysterious past, had ignited a firestorm of controversy that threatened to tear the royal family apart. Princess Charlotte, the king's sharp-tongued sister known for her unwavering loyalty to tradition, had watched in growing horror as her brother's new queen slowly dismantled everything their mother had built. Meanwhile, King Alexander found himself caught between his love for his controversial wife and his duty to a crown that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. But tonight, in the privacy of Charlotte's private chambers, a conversation was taking place that would change everything. The princess and the king were about to make a decision that would either save the monarchy or destroy it forever. As thunder rolled across the ancient castle grounds, the fate of a 1,000-year-old dynasty hung in the balance, and the woman they had welcomed as family was about to discover that blood runs thicker than royal titles. What happens when tradition clashes with transformation? When family loyalty battles personal happiness? And when the very people sworn to protect the crown must choose between their oath and their conscience? The answer would reshape a kingdom and reveal that even in the modern age, some battles for power never change. They simply wear more elegant disguises. The ancient grandfather clock in the east wing of Winshire Palace chimed midnight as Princess Charlotte made her way through the dimly lit corridors, her silk slippers silent against the cold marble floors. The palace, which had housed 12 generations of royalty, seemed to hold its breath in the darkness, as if sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. Charlotte paused before the ornate mirror that had once belonged to her great-grandmother, Queen Victoria Margaret. Her reflection stared back, steel-gray hair pulled into an elegant chignon, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of posture that spoke of decades of royal protocol. At 58, she was still formidable, still the woman who had served as the royal family's unofficial guardian of tradition for over 3 decades. Tonight, however, tradition itself was under siege. The sound of footsteps echoed from the main corridor. Charlotte turned to see her brother, King Alexander, approaching with the weary gait of a man who had aged 10 years in the past too. His usually pristine appearance was disheveled, his dark hair tousled, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes bearing the weight of impossible choices. "Alex," Charlotte whispered, using the childhood name she rarely spoke aloud anymore. "Thank you for coming." King Alexander nodded grimly. "Your message said it was urgent. What couldn't wait until morning?" Charlotte gestured toward her private sitting room, a cozy space filled with family photographs and personal mementos that told the story of a life lived in service to the crown. As they settled into the familiar leather chairs beside the fireplace, she poured 2 glasses of brandy from a crystal decanter that had been a wedding gift from their parents. "It's about Isabel," Charlotte said without preamble. "And what she's planning." Alexander's jaw tightened. Queen Isabel Blackwood had been his wife for 18 months now, and the controversy surrounding their marriage had never fully subsided. She had been a successful businesswoman, the CEO of Blackwood Industries, when they met at a charity gala. Their whirlwind romance had captivated the public initially, but the fairy tale had quickly soured as Isabel began implementing changes that many viewed as attacks on centuries of royal tradition. "Charlotte, we've discussed this," Alexander said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Isabel is my wife and your queen. Whatever differences you have with her modernization efforts, this isn't about modernization," Charlotte interrupted, her voice sharp. "This is about the systematic dismantling of everything our family has stood for. This is about turning the monarchy into a business venture." She reached for a leather portfolio that had been resting on the side table. "I've been watching, Alex. Documenting. Investigating." She opened the folder, revealing photographs, financial documents, and correspondence. "Do you know what your wife has been doing while you've been focused on your diplomatic duties?" Alexander leaned forward, his brow furrowed. The documents spread before him painted a picture he hadn't expected. Financial records showed massive expenditures on modernization projects that seemed to have little to do with royal duties. Correspondence revealed meetings with corporate executives, media moguls, and political figures that had never been reported to the royal council. Where did you get these? Alexander asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Does it matter? Charlotte replied. What matters is what they reveal. Your wife isn't trying to modernize the monarchy, Alex. She's trying to commercialize it. Look at this. She pointed to a particular document. Plans to license the royal image for a streaming series. Negotiations to turn parts of the palace into a luxury hotel. Discussions about selling exclusive access to royal events to the highest bidder. Alexander's face had gone pale as he absorbed the implications. She told me these were preliminary discussions, nothing more than exploring options for increasing revenue to fund charitable work. Charitable work? Charlotte's voice carried a note of bitter laughter. Alex, she's been funneling money through her old company. Blackwood Industries has received contracts worth millions from the royal estate, all approved through channels that bypass traditional oversight. She's not funding charity. She's funding herself. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. Alexander stared at the documents, his hands trembling slightly as he turned page after page. Each revelation hit him like a physical blow. The woman he had fallen in love with, the woman he had defended against critics and traditionalists, had been systematically betraying not just him, but the very institution he had sworn to protect. There's more, Charlotte said softly. She pulled out a tablet and showed him a series of recorded conversations. I had to be sure, Alex. I couldn't bring you accusations without proof. The recordings were damning. Isabel's voice, clear and confident, discussing the outdated institution she had married into and her plans to bring it into the 21st century, whether they like it or not. There were conversations about leveraging royal connections for business deals, about using her position to influence government contracts, and, most damaging of all, dismissive comments about the naive family she had married into. She called us relics, Alexander whispered, his voice breaking. She called our mother's legacy a quaint anachronism. Charlotte reached across and placed her hand on her brother's arm. For all their differences over the years, for all the times they had clashed over policy and protocol, she had never seen him look so broken. The weight of betrayal was written across his features, mixing with the terrible realization that his personal choices had put the monarchy itself at risk. The worst part, Charlotte continued, her own voice gentle now, is what she's planning next. I have sources in the media who say she's been shopping a tell-all interview to several major networks. If the marriage ends, she intends to paint herself as the victim of an archaic, possibly racist institution that could never accept an outsider. Racist? Alexander looked confused. She's been cultivating that narrative for months, Alex. Her public relations team has been very careful about how they position certain criticisms of her. Any opposition to her changes gets framed as prejudice against her background, her success as an independent woman, her modern sensibilities. It's masterfully done, really. She's been building a narrative that makes her untouchable while painting us as the villains. Alexander stood and walked to the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens where he had played as a child. The weight of the crown, both literal and metaphorical, had never felt heavier. He thought of his mother, Queen Margaret, who had passed away just 5 years ago, leaving him with words of wisdom about duty, service, and the sacred trust between the monarchy and the people. What do you suggest? He asked finally. Charlotte had been waiting for this question. She had spent weeks preparing for this conversation, knowing that everything depended on how she handled this moment. We take back control. Together. The way Mother would have wanted us to. How? First, we gather the evidence we need to protect the institution. I've already had preliminary conversations with the royal lawyers. If we can prove financial impropriety, breach of trust, violation of her oath to the crown, we can move for an annulment rather than a divorce. It protects you, it protects the monarchy, and it prevents her from claiming the victim narrative. Alexander turned back to face his sister. And second, we present a united front. You and I, working together to restore stability and public confidence. We return to the traditions that have made this monarchy strong while still embracing necessary change. But change that serves the people, not corporate interests. The king was quiet for a long moment, processing not just the information but the emotions that came with it. His marriage, which had begun with such hope and promise, had become a threat to everything he held sacred. The woman he had loved, perhaps still loved, had betrayed not just him but the trust of an entire nation. "She'll fight this," he said finally. "She won't go quietly." "I know," Charlotte replied, "which is why we need to be prepared. We need documentation of everything, witnesses, legal backing, and, most importantly, we need the support of Parliament and the people. We need to show them that we're acting not out of personal vendetta, but out of duty to the crown and the country." Alexander sat back down, reaching for his brandy. "How long do we have?" "According to my sources, she's planning to move forward with the interview within the next month. Once that happens, everything changes. The narrative gets away from us, and we're on the defensive permanently." They sat in companionable silence for several minutes, both understanding the magnitude of what they were discussing. This wasn't just about a failed marriage or family drama. This was about the survival of an institution that had guided their nation for over 1,000 years. "Do you remember what Mother used to say about duty?" Charlotte asked softly. Alexander smiled sadly. "Duty isn't what we want to do, it's what we must do, especially when it's difficult." She knew this day might come, Charlotte continued. "Not specifically this situation, but she knew that someday we might have to choose between personal happiness and institutional survival. She prepared us for it." "I loved her," Alexander said, and Charlotte knew he meant Isabel. "I really believed we could make it work. I thought her business acumen could help modernize the monarchy in positive ways. I thought her outsider perspective could help us connect better with ordinary people." "Your intentions were good, Alex. But good intentions don't protect against manipulation." Alexander nodded, understanding that his sister wasn't trying to hurt him, but rather to save them all. "What's our timeline?" "We move this week. I've already scheduled meetings with the key players, the royal legal team, the parliamentary liaison, the heads of the various royal charities who've been concerned about recent changes. We present the evidence, we outline our plan, and we ask for their support." "And Isabel?" "We confront her together. We give her the choice: quiet resignation with a generous settlement and a non-disclosure agreement, or public exposure of everything we've uncovered. Most people will choose self-preservation over vindication." Alexander drained his brandy and stood up. The weight on his shoulders seemed somehow lighter now that the decision had been made. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow morning." "But, Alex," Charlotte rose as well, meeting her brother's eyes. "Once we begin this, there's no going back. Are you prepared for what this means? For how it will change everything?" The king looked around the room, taking in the portraits of their ancestors, the symbols of a legacy stretching back centuries. He thought of the oath he had taken when he was crowned, the promises he had made to serve the people and protect the institution of monarchy. "I'm prepared," he said firmly. "The crown must survive, even if the man wearing it has to sacrifice everything to ensure it does." As they prepared to leave the room, Charlotte placed a hand on her brother's arm. "We'll get through this, Alex. Together." "Yes," he agreed, straightening his shoulders in a gesture that suddenly reminded her powerfully of their mother. Together. Outside, the storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke, sending rain against the ancient windows of Windshire Palace. But inside, in the quiet dignity of Charlotte's sitting room, two siblings had made a decision that would reshape a monarchy and prove that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. The battle for the crown had begun, and by morning, nothing would ever be the same.